And we go in, we're drenched, with our guitars and amps in hand, and it's asses to elbows, hipsters, with their ironic mustaches and their unicycles and their, IPAs and whatever.
This is Champagne is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign-Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign-Urbana music scene, past or present. Champagne is Also a Band podcast is proud to be a part of the Champagne Showers Podcast Network. Welcome to Champagne is Also a Band podcast. Today, I have Larry Gates from episode 90. We're going to be talking about the new Curb Service EP, Four Letter World. So, Larry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back. It's great to be back on the ranch.
Let's just jump into it, because why not? I guess my first question, I got the sense that this was a narrative of a whole story. I had an impression on the first song, which I was thinking the first song, which is Truth Is, I almost pictured that as being the end of the story. Kind of like you did a Quentin Tarantino, like the end is first. When did this process of writing these 6 songs, how did that come about?
Most of them were written within the last 2 years, probably about a year and a half span. The final track, though, is actually 18 years old. It was on the very first Curb Service release that was called Little Red Recovery Room, which became the name of my studio. That song was actually written when I was in a band called Lorenzo Getz. It was our last 6 to 8 months in existence, and that was a true story about a Lorenzo Getz outing in New York. We wrote that song and we played it 6 or 8 months before we broke up, so it was one of the first things I recorded as Curb Service. But the version that's out there from 2007 sounds very different in the way that it's played live. I wanted to capture that energy. The rest of it, you go back a couple of years ago, and I had a songwriting exercise where I got a RV through Airbnb. I got someone to put an RV on Rend Lake, and I'd never been to Rend Lake. It's like 2.5 hours south, this huge Southern Illinois lake. And I sat in this RV and wrote songs for a week and demoed them. I brought a little mobile rig. And no television, no movies. I had a magazine. I would go to the beach every morning and soak. It was 90-some degrees all week. So I would start my day in the water, and then I would have lunch, and I would write and record all afternoon. And so Truth Is and The Remedy came from that. I think I wrote 4 songs that week, and those 2 made it. Funeral Suit came soon after. Pick Me Up was the last one written, and then Brooklyn is the older one. Use a Friend is the one that came about a year ago. So most of them more recent tunes. I had not even zoomed out enough to realize the narrative, other than it's all but one bridge is completely autobiographical, but they're from different eras and different inspirations. And so I was talking to Ian Shepherd, who plays drums on this record and plays drums with Curb Service Live. He's a lyrics last kind of guy. He hears the tune and he's deconstructing it musically, drums first, and then he will eventually get around to the lyrics, and he's just really getting around to absorbing these songs as they are. And so the narrative, I went, oh yeah, okay, I see. But you're absolutely right. It's the final say is how it kicks off.
The last song that you wrote was Pick Me Up.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. That's the one that feels like the turn in the story. But I basically did like a summation or whatever you want to call it of what I kind of was picking up from the song. Like if you were to 1 or 2 tagline it, it was confusion. What do you want? I got this sense of it was, can you help me figure out what I want? I can't figure out where I'm going with this, so somebody tell me, you know what I mean? But I'm just kind of curious about the inspiration on that one, since it's pretty fresh in your mind. Right.
It's frustration, it's disappointment, and it's hope. That one had dual inspiration. I'd set out to write a song for my partner, and I did. I I wrote a whole song. We rehearsed it. It never came together like I thought it was. And in the end, I decided that it was a little forced because I set out to write a song because I had to write a song and not because I was inspired to write a song. And so I am in no way, shape, or form afraid of murdering my darlings in that take a whole song, demo it out, rehearse it with a band, go, nope, gone. I wrote Pick Me Up, and definitely that sentiment and the hook is inspired by her. And when you go through life and you just want to be loved and you just want to be felt taken care of, and whether that's in romantic relationships, family, and anything, that's what you really want. And the second verse is inspired by my son, and that's actually a lyric from a song that he wrote when he was a teenager. I hate it because you hate it too is taken from a tune of his. And there's a lot of parallels in what I just said in relationship with him. So the bridge of that song, it's not necessarily not autobiographical, but it doesn't have anything to do with those two inspirations. I just wanted it in the narrative of that song to have the turn and the accusations made. And so that was the most liberty I took in songwriting on the whole album, I feel like.
Did you have a few songs that you didn't end up adding to this, or... Oh, okay. Of course.
Yeah.
As the audience can tell, you nodded.
Right. I'm great on a podcast.
How these ended up kind of falling into place as they did. How did you pick kind of the order of these songs? And then we can kind of go into each of the songs and kind of talk about the themes and recording and etc.
As I mentioned, the narrative thing didn't really hit me till more recently, in that you could string it together in a story and have a conflict and a resolution, or at least an acceptance. But for me, it was just an energy thing that we've been opening shows with Truth Is. I think it's a cool opener and gets the tone set. Someone asked me the other day, what's your favorite? Well, they asked what the best was, and I said, there's no such thing. It's all subjective. So you can say your favorite, but the best in art should never exist. But that's semantics. But I thank you as a friend because, man, it might be in the running for the catchiest thing I've written. And there's a couple of flavors in there that I've never dabbled in. There's almost a Eddie Money chorus, that 70s situation going on there, but those are a nice 1-2 punch to start it. Maybe you and I talked about this before, but I think the third track in the sequence is always an important one. My buddy Frank Leone and I were talking about this recently, and I said, well, I see you go one of two ways. You either go gunning for the fences, or I take it down in an unexpected way. And that's what I do with Funeral Suit. I mean, it completely bottoms out into this and a real gut punch of a song. And then I wanted a palate cleanser. So the most boppiest song, I can't say it's the happiest because it's another FU song for sure, but the boppiest song being The Remedy, and then Pick Me Up is a nice...
I have to interrupt with, so my taglines for The Remedy, which maybe we could get into later, but I just had when you talk about it being boppiest, I said collateral damage, hopefully. I don't know. I got the sense of it being this kind of like you want to release it all and then hope that people get in the spray. You know what I mean? Like kind of, I don't care who this hurts in a way, and just boom, out. And then that's why it's just like collateral damage. Hopefully.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, carry on. You were just about to mention.
And then, Pick Me Up is the turn, as you say. And then Brooklyn is this old tale. I love telling the story of that song and how it came to be. So if we touch on them all, I can go into detail on that one. But it's a great closer, and that tends to be our closer live, and that ridiculous Pete Townsend ending there. And it was kind of bookended, inspired by the live sets. And then what's the proper energy flow, and how can I throw you a curveball and then let you recover?
And I keep thinking about how, in much the same way Truth Is feels like the end of the story, I feel like you could almost say like Brooklyn is the beginning of the story, where it's just like, oh, fuck.
Yep.
Yeah. What was the first song you recorded?
There were 2 recording sessions, ultimately. 2 recording sessions for the band in basic tracking. At Thanksgiving, Ian Shepherd and I both got COVID for the first time. And we were in terrible shape for a few weeks. And then in early December, we had this recording session where we recorded the first 4 songs on there. Truth Is, Use a Friend, Funeral Suit, and Remedy. And then I took those sessions back home to the Little Red Recovery Room and did guitar overdubs and did all my vocals there. On each song, usually the main guitar that sits in the middle is what was done on tracking day. And then everything that beefs up the choruses and bridges and, leads and feedbacks and all that stuff that you hear are all overdubs. So we had that one day, we got through the holidays, and I had like respiratory issues for 2.5 months. I couldn't sing. I couldn't do the vocals all through December, January, and into February. And by the time February had rolled around, Ian was diagnosed with colon cancer. Right. And we had a 5-alarm emergency. He went right in the next day, surgery, recovery time, and it took a long time. I mean, this was complete just backburnered. In the meantime, as he started to get back on his feet a little bit, he wanted to knock it out. He wanted to see it through. So we scheduled the next session. It was in the last 2 months, probably 6 weeks ago, where we knocked out Brooklyn and Pick Me Up. I took him home that week, and in the next 2 days, I had done all my overdubs. And so just last week, Anthony Gravino mixed and mastered everything at High Cross Sound in Urbana. And
is that also where you recorded everything?
The basic tracking days were there at High Cross in Urbana, yeah.
Maybe it's just your particular style or Ian's style, but I wanted to comment earlier that like the drums, something about the way that the drums sound from High Cross. Yeah, there's just this really, I don't know what to call it, but it's like this crispness.
This great drum sound, like huge there. Yeah. It's one of Ian's kit, is the house kit at High Cross, and it's there, and we get sounds so fast there. I've rarely been in a situation where I can pull around front and load in, and by the time that I've got my cables sorted, I mean, we're ready to do a take, or at least start sorting things out. It's not a long day of getting sounds, or several days of getting sounds. It happens very quickly. That initial December tracking, and then kind of 6 months of painstaking life gets in the way, and then we were able to see it through. And it was very important for us, and Ian in particular, to see this thing through and get it wrapped up and get it finished, and to have some completion and be proud of it. So it's been intense those 2 weeks in July to put a bow on it and get it ready to get into the digital distribution and reach out to folks like yourself.
The first track, Truth Is, as I said, like I thought this was kind of the end of the story. I'm kind of curious about some of the decisions that happen within the song, because I think some of the best harmonies are going on in there, vocal harmonies and like interjections, and when you decide to harmonize and when not to harmonize, I think is really interesting. And I'm not sure I know how to articulate that well, but like the chorus is this, it's true, I'm through with you, and some of the ways that the voices are interacting with each other. How do you come up with your harmonies, and how do you think about it? Did you actually have the chorus being played and then you sing over it as how to find the right harmonies, or did you have them all kind of written in your head, so to speak?
We kind of had those sorted just from playing that song live. And then after the December session, while I was working on overdubs, Ian came over for a day, and we just tracked all of our ideas for backing vocals. And it ended up using a fair amount. I mean, some of them from that actual day, some of them, the idea was there, but we wanted a better performance of it. We did some overdubs at Anthony's studio. Ian and Anthony had figured out their parts, and we do those live. So that came together quickly. Initially, there was more of a melody at the end of that, and we just decided to do the fist pumping U's instead, and it just helped energy-wise. And those are kind of more in unison. But those harmonies, most of them stemmed from harmony tracking day. It would have been probably January. Ian just came over one day, and we just cranked on them all day.
So the second track, Use a Friend, this one, I don't know, there's a few lines in there that I feel are like these really nice visuals. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the words have that, it's a flick of a lighter. And then in the second verse, you got, I'm sure I messed, this is only me guessing at some of the lyrics, but got caught in the same type squalor.
Got caught in the same old spiral.
Oh, doggone it. Well, then I take it all back. Man.
All of it?
Because I was just, because I thought squalor was such, I was like, who says squalor?
I would. Squalor is one thing about me, Sven, is that I do love, because I grew up in Indiana, I do love hick slang sometimes. And I was
but it had that, like, And the thing is that the consonants and vowels and the way that it sounds still has that effect, whether it is actually squalor or spiral.
Right.
You know, because there's that, but the lyrics are kind of what drives a lot of this. Although I do have to say, like, I guess it's right after the second verse, there's this whole modulation through to the end of the chorus. You're like throwing in the sevenths, and it's almost like late 60s Baroque pop kind of sound. It was a surprise because I feel this album has that very alternative rock kind of sound. Those were some of my thoughts about the Use a Friend, and even though I screwed up on the lyrics on the second verse, but I feel like it has a good mouthfeel. I almost want to say like the way that the words work in there.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about that. Putting that together, that song, and like, was this a lyrics first or a music first?
It was music first, man. Last summer, we had the privilege of opening for the Poster Children downtown Toast of Taylor show. I was sick. It was the only 2 times I got sick that year. I think that was maybe June. I don't remember. Last summer, and then got sick this last winter. Only 2 times I was really bad. An hour before I was supposed to be there, I was in the tub, like trying to regulate my body temperature, on the fence about whether I could even do it. I sucked it up and I masked up and I went there and I got on stage and I laid it all out there, you know, because it's the Poster Kids. What are you going to do?
Right.
Stay home and be sick? No. The very next day, because they have that spastic art rock thing down to a science, that initial riff, I started writing that song. And so that is definitely inspired by Poster Children. And then lyrically and thematically, it's funny because the last time I was here, we talked about a song called Take It From Me, which I had written heavily under the influence of too much of an edible. Coincidentally, my partner and I hopped the train and went up to Chicago last winter and went to that terrible Alanis Morissette musical, Jagged Little Pill. And listen, those songs are cool when Alanis does them, but when some like mid-range theater kids are doing them, they're a lot less cool. And then all the new songs that were written for the play were awful. But we were at dinner and she said, "Here, I think this is 10 milligrams." And I went, "Okay." And then we had a little chief on the way to the theater and we sit down, we get our playbill, and then the show starts and I realize I'm in a bad place. I'm in a bad place to be in public. And I don't remember if it was the Nederland. I don't remember what theater, very nice theater in Chicago. And we're in this balcony situation. And Sven, all I'm thinking about is, can I get down the stairs and out of here to go down and like get some water, get out of the space that I'm in? Everything was wrong with the situation. The vibe was all off for me. And I'm waiting like 30 minutes into the show and I'm really in a headlock. And I'm thinking, man, just wait for intermission. And then I was like, no, there's going to be like 1,000 people out there at intermission. And so I finally got the courage to quietly slip out of the balcony and go and just collect myself for a moment. And it was fine. The show was terrible. But it's that inspired that chorus of very much like Steelers Wheel Stuck in the Middle with You. That's a song about a guy at a party having a bad trip. And I don't even know how I get down the stairs. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. It's that situation is why you could use a friend. I don't even know what's going on. I don't know where my phone is. I'm on the floor. I'm just trying to hang on here. It's that situation. But without that context, it also just feels like a person who's desperate and needs comfort. And we could tie that into that whole narrative.
And then in Funeral Suit, one of the things that really hits me is that gritty, bright guitar at the beginning, which sounds kind of, hopefully I'm not insulting anybody, kind of practice ampy. You know, a little bit like the very light, papery kind of sound, very bright. And I like the fact that it takes until you get to like the pre-chorus, the down, where everything else comes in. So it's like everything kind of comes into clarity. And I keep thinking about, you know, of course, my tagline, I'll throw those in now, is I had finding new and cutting ties. But now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, well, I mean, maybe the cutting ties with the chorus of Get Up My Love, It's Time to Go. Maybe that, I don't know if you call that the chorus or whatever, but I didn't know if it was leaving together like It's Time to Go, or it's like, It's Time to Go.
Neither. Here's the gut punch. That is a real song coping with mortality. And You remember in Return of the Jedi, and they're on Endor, and there's a battle going on, and there's two Ewoks are running, and an explosion goes, and one of them goes down and doesn't get up, and the other goes and tugs on his arm.
Yeah, he keeps wanting him to, like, let's go.
It's literally trying to wake your loved one who has passed, not being able to accept that moment, and trying to say, nope, get up, it's time to go. We gotta go. Everything's okay, right? It's that heavy. And I'd never written anything that heavy. And I remember writing that song just one night, just sitting at home, and wrote that song. And usually if I'm in the house and not in the studio, I will at least, and you might be like this, I will at least hit the voice memo on my phone and record a demo right away. I want the freshest idea. I want the freshest run through and interpretation of it. And then we can go start to parse it out as a proper demo. And I remember writing it and thinking, are you really writing this? That's pretty provocative opening line, man. And I played it recorded it as a voice memo on my phone, and then just kind of sat and sobbed for a minute because it was just heavy, a heavy thing, but an undeniable thing, man. This is what we deal with. This is the thing, isn't it? It is something for all of us to face. That's why that ends up being the third song, is that is such your third track placement and sequence. Holy cow, there's a gut punch.
It did not register that way, but it does. Yeah. Now
you'll always think of the Ewoks when you hear that song.
No kidding, right? Yeah, there's a lot of things that happened in Star Wars that you could say was sad, but man, that was just like,
That's top 2.
So, of course, in the editing process, I realized that he just said top 2, and I didn't even find out what part of the top 2 was. So I just texted him. He got back to me, and he says, "When Vader dies is part of the top 2 saddest things in Star Wars." So now you know. Back to the show.
There's people that are, the Ewoks who really had the only skin that they had in the game is like, look, we just don't want to lose where we live,
what we have,
right?
Yeah.
And it was just like, hey, we should probably help you. This is not our battle, but we're gonna help. And of course, then the loss. So anyway, sorry, just but
can we do an episode just on Star Wars, please?
Yes. I don't know. Fly casual.
Oh, see?
Yeah.
You're picking up what I'm laying down.
Yeah, now I have like no idea where to go with this, but I mean, my point earlier was that it was, you have this very vulnerable, it's that guitar sitting there in the background, and you kind of being as open as possible about how you feel, and like when I get remembered. And then also, I want you to remember me in this way. The one that actually kind of threw me for a loop is at the end of that first verse. Is how does that go again? These are my quick notes. It's like the whole like, if I tell you get on the plane right now.
Second verse. Is that I want you to get on the next plane and come and see me right away.
Yes, that's it. Get on the next plane. Oh, see, I put the verse. I made it all one verse. My bad. I get it though. Yeah. Well, that whole like, I guess now I'm looking at it. It's like somebody on their way out, kind of saying like, "Hey, you need to come now." Well, it's about that time. But what I was thinking of is like, I want to know, not only when I'm dead do I want you to write these things, but I also want to know right now that if I need you to come on this plane, you're gonna drop everything and come and help me,
right?
Whatever it is,
right?
And I don't know, interesting. Yeah,
I looked at that as bereavement travel. You're gonna come see me right away. I won't see you. You're gonna come and see me right away. Yeah,
gotcha.
That's bereavement travel for sure.
That's the worst.
Yes.
Well, and actually, I'll add one. I'll add not just the bereavement, but I think the one that's even more, it has the element of dread, is that if you hurry, you might still be able to catch them before they're on their way out, and you need to catch them before they're gone. And it's like this, can I get there soon? It's this weird like desperation. Yeah. Like you want to see them like just before.
Right. A chance to say goodbye, a chance for closure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all those themes, man. And I'd never even dipped my toe into material that heavy, before.
Right.
But one night that song presented itself and I ran with it. Yeah.
And then, of course, you follow it with the Remedy.
The palate cleanser.
Yes. Do you think of it as a palate cleanser or just like...
Not narratively.
Oh, okay.
Stylistically.
Okay.
It's a much, like I said, bouncier song. It almost feels happy until you listen to what I'm saying.
I mean, I can hear the loneliness in you. I hope I got that right.
I can feel the loneliness in you. I can hear it coming up quick.
Oh, I can feel the loneliness.
Yeah.
And then I can hear... Oh, okay.
I can hear
so
it, yeah.
This is me. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, sometimes you can tell my confirmation bias in my own head. You might be
right. Let me check. Now I'm second guessing myself, and I think you're right because I did struggle with that. Which one was going to be here and which one was going to be feel? In that one, what's the song called? Remedy. I can hear the loneliness in you. I can feel it coming up quick. You were right.
Yes!
Sven. 2 points.
No, but it's
Sven.
all right because I was listening to it and trying to quickly type as quickly as I
should
could.
have sent you lyrics.
No, that's
my
fine.
bad.
That's fine. No, then we would have been here for 2 hours because that's it just depends. If I decide to go kind of the theory based, then I can go a long ways. Or if I go lyric based, then it's just like so. Right now, I'm trying to do like middle road, which means it will be shorter, which won't drive people nuts with my weird. Anyway,
theories.
So, I mean, we kind of touched on that, but there's something about that riff. Somebody will probably punch the sky when I say this, but like I had like this Devo thought in my head of that guitar riff, and I don't know. Like I basically wrote down low, inch up, low, inch up was the rich riff is how I was thinking. I have to always write it because in case I don't immediately picture it, I'm like
that was one from the. Would you have a question?
Well, I was just curious where that kind of came from, but go ahead and
during that Wren Lake writing retreat, the self-imposed writing retreat that I went on. First, I got there, I got unpacked, and I set up my mobile studio, and within 40 minutes, I had written Truth Is. I literally just sat down and wrote it. And then the next thing I wrote the next day was The Remedy. But how I got that one was, I could pull them up right now. My voice memos are just full of riffs and ideas. Sometimes a melody, sometimes I'm just do into the phone. If I have a guitar next to me, I grab it. Here's this riff. I don't want to forget it. And so that riff was bouncing around in there. I'd be curious to see how old it really is. I can find when that originated. So that gave me a jumping off point. There's this riff. Okay, I can do something with that. And I named that demo recording session Petty Costello because, man, if it isn't Tom Petty and Elvis Costello in that song, I'm not sure what it is. I tell you why too is I've been listening to Less Than Zero a lot. The Elvis Costello song, I love that song. And if hey, that's got the same sort of vocal nonsensical in the riff, right? That thing is definitely an ode to Elvis. And overall, this goes beyond this song. Overall, I really tried to make an effort to write a simple song, to not code everything in riddles and make it so complicated. I tried to just speak in layman's terms as best I could. That was the assignment. I don't know that it gets more simple than that song.
Okay, so this is a little weird. I interviewed Larry and tried to go through all of the songs, and then somehow, as I was approaching the end, I completely forgot the penultimate song, Pick Me Up. So instead of trying to re-record and getting everything back together, I had Larry send me a recording just kind of talking about the song Pick Me Up so that we can kind of complete the circle on this excellent EP. So here's what Larry had to say about the song Pick Me Up.
So Pick Me Up, we tried to record it in that original December session, and it just wasn't right. The feel wasn't quite right, and the bridge was a little more straight up Bo Diddley than I wanted it to be. So I took that one back home and reworked it and found a feel like the sludginess of it, kind of like a Dandy Warhol's feel to it, but another simple song that you shouldn't overthink. But that one came together in the second session real easily, along with Brooklyn that day. But pretty happy with how that one turned out. There's a couple of nods to songs that I love on the bridge, and it's just in the cadence and how I decided to structure those words. And the first one is a song on an early Aesop Rock album featuring LP called We're Famous. And the second one is the song Rims by Solange. So I'll let you each dive into those songs and see if you can discover what I lifted from each of those. Those are Easter eggs there, and I've probably said too much already.
Well, I'm not exactly the most perfect podcaster, but I think that we at least covered it back, and thanks for bearing with me. Back to the regular show.
Now we're coming up to the final song, which is the beginning of the story. Now, is the song Brooklyn. This was the one that I said, I don't know about, like, I didn't know about that song. And it wasn't like, I don't like it. Mm-hmm. It felt different. And then somehow, after listening through a few times, it was like, I don't know, sometimes I like the idea of kind of going silently into that good night,
mm-hmm.
you know? And I felt like this was a little bit too, like, punchy. Mm-hmm. And then I started to appreciate it once I had made that, okay, well, we already heard what the end of the story is, and it is that first song. So, okay, that works. Now we know what the problem is, right? So we know,
right?
We know what we should have been worried about all along,
right? It's me,
right? So you said that this was one that you had written 18 years ago,
18 years,
and this was originally planned to be a Lorenzo Getz song, and then you recorded it again as Curb Service. Mm-hmm. Again? Or are there three versions of this?
No,
or just two?
It was never recorded with Lorenzo Getz.
I see.
It's probably a live version floating around somewhere, but yeah, it was the first thing written for what would have been the next Lorenzo Getz project. And then I was writing the second song, and we literally broke up in the middle of a writing session for that song. That was it. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back, was the second song, which I do have a demo that I've recorded, and that sits off somewhere. Some historian somewhere will get the key to the vault. So yeah, this was the song like I said, I just made it the first thing that I did when I started releasing things under the name Curb Service. So it's on that first album from 2007, written in 06 as a Lorenzo Getz song. Yeah, so 07, and then it's been part of the live repertoire, whether I'm solo or whether I'm with the loop pedal or whether I'm with Anthony and Ian. It's kind of traditionally been a closer because it's a good story, and we always ended with the big raucous ending, and so we wanted to see what that felt like, and can it sit with these other tunes? And it is different because it's displaced on the timeline,
right? But
we tried to make it sit on the same shelf with these, as far as making a very loud, dynamic record that kind of jumps off the speakers a little bit.
This one, I'm going to kind of side jump on this one, because this is the one where I was like, is like vocals sound like Jane's Addiction. Some of the I was like, whoa, and I'm totally screwing up the name, so correct me. And then, but is it Perry or Terry Farrell?
Perry.
Yeah. Thank you. There's so many things that I keep thinking about in terms of your influences and kind of returning to that 90s sound. Mm-hmm. And I feel like Brooklyn kind of captured that really, really well, and then kind of puts, can I say it like reverse, puts things in context. All the other songs, like you see that.
Right, you see how we got here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like that has that, it kind of does this great reset and then gives that context. So why did you decide to use this one as opposed to some of the other songs that you'd been working on in the context of the other five?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a few songs that are either older songs of mine or some that have never been released that are part of the live set. There's a few more that we may get around to doing someday, but that was one. I mean, it's for people who come and watch Curb Service, they know that song. People who have listened to me for the last 20 some years know that song, And so I felt like it deserved a better version than what was out there. On the first Curb Service record, there's no drums at all. It's me on a drum machine. Everything is a sample or a loop or me literally playing drum machines. There aren't nearly the dynamics in that version. And so we would like to hear, the 3-piece band, Curb Service, would like to hear what this sounds like when we do it. So let's lay it down. I think it works. I think it works in context of those others, especially because this whole thing sounds like a 90s alterna, project.
Right.
And will confuse people even more. If you look at the discography and are already confused, you'll be even more confused now as how and why this happened when it did. But I just look at everything like a experiment or a project. We want to do this. Can we capture these things and make them, like I said, dynamic and pop the big harmonies, simple songs? Can you do it and be true to yourself and still pay homage to all your influences and muses throughout,
And actually, one of the things that I think, whether Brooklyn exists as a single or exists within this EP, the thing that really turned it for me was I spent some time just listening to the bass line in this. It's so, I don't know, like the things for me that I think are like sweet spots that I'll always like kind of melt over is a nice little like almost a melodic line and then just dives back down to like these really deep bass parts, and just like you get the sense that the bass is getting a chance to like sing, and I love that. I love that so much, and I think that when I took the time to really just hone in on that sound, I was like, okay, yeah, there's that thing that you're just like kind of the uncovering the beauty in a weird way. Like just it's got beautiful lines in it is what I mean to say. And so, originally I would have put this as not my most favorite, but I think after listening to it a few times, like the whole album and then hitting that end spot, I think this is actually probably one of my favorites on the EP.
It really turned fun.
It's one of those things, like some songs they just surprise you later.
Yeah. You know what I haven't done, and I'd be curious to go on the original 2007 version. Eric Fisher of Lorenzo Getz played the bass line on that. A lot of those moves are in there, but I haven't A-B'd Anthony's bass line up against Eric's bass line to see how they differ. Anthony's definitely stepping on the muff pedal and got that huge distorted bass sound, and that serves this rendition very well. In the 90s influence, that song definitely had some soul coughing and Beck influences on it vocally, on the verses. The bridge does a thing of its own. It's just an opportunity to take you out into space for a second, to turn you around and offer up the punchline, That story, by the way, so Lorenzo Getz is playing for a week or two out east, and we had played in Buffalo, and the next night was in New York City. And that's for people who just think, oh, those are both in New York State. It's a slog to get to Buffalo into the city. And it starts rain, like right away into that trip, it starts raining on us. And by the time we hit the city, it had been raining in New York for like 13 straight hours, and everything's flooded. It's a pain in the ass. And we're playing at Arlene's Grocery, there's a really terrible Michael Cera movie called Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. And his band he's trying to get her to come to see his band, and they play at Arlene's Grocery. It was a big deal. My buddy who did all of our East Coast booking, Mark Zalesko, he had set it up, and it was the early days of internet radio, and it was going to be a live internet radio thing. And we're like almost late getting in. It's chaos. And we pull up in front of the club, and Arlene's Grocery is like New York doesn't have alleys really. So you have to load in through the front of almost every club you play. And we go in, we're drenched, with our guitars and amps in hand. And it's asses to elbows, hipsters, with their ironic mustaches and their unicycles and their IPAs and whatever, and we're squeezing in between to get the gear in there. And then I say, okay, I gotta go park, so we're in the ready room, the staging room, we got our gear, and my host Mark Zalesko says, I'll go with you and we'll find parking. And he's also, I should mention, he's trash. By the time we get there, he's trash. He loved Lorenzo Getz. He was so excited to have us. He'd set this whole thing up, and he had started drinking early. And so he's my co-pilot. Raining cats and dogs. This is Lower East Side Manhattan. And he's telling me, turn down this street. No, look over here. And the next thing you know, I'm on the Brooklyn Bridge going to a completely different borough. And as I'm on the bridge, my early cell phone, oh gosh, I wish I could remember which cell phone I had, but early.
It was a Motorola or a Nokia?
Nokia. It was a blue Nokia. It rings. Hello? Hey, we're on right now. I mean, I'm not even in the right. You're right. I said, hang on, give me a second. We whip the thing around, go back across, duck down a few streets, find parking. I squeeze the van in this tiny parking space, and we're running in the rain, ankle deep, splashing, soaked, running a couple of blocks, walk in Arlene's Grocery, throw the guitar and go, hi, we're Lorenzo Getz from Champaign, Illinois. And we're live on the internet. The whole time that tour is going on, everything was falling apart back home in the relationship I was in. And so by the time that happens, by the time we actually, make the mistake and get on the wrong bridge, that night, things are going south. But that was the story. That was how that song came to be.
Yeah, nothing about that story. Like, I was like, what's going to happen next? Because I was just waiting. Oof. Yeah.
That's the story. It was a rough night, but we played really well and had fun.
Bad moment, good song.
Right?
Larry, thank you for being on the show again and telling me about your EP, 4-Letter World. And, it should be out now. And look for it on your favorite streaming service on Bandcamp, perhaps?
Bandcamp, yeah.
Awesome. And I appreciate you coming out here under the threat of tornadoes, perhaps, but that we live in the Midwest, so there you go.
We'll see if I'll do my best to make it home in one piece. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all you do for the scene and music and taking the time to listen to our silly stories that we put down on record. You inspire me with your passion for music. Thank you, sir. Hey, thank you for listening to Champaign is Also a Band podcast. This is Larry Gates from Curb Service, episode 90, reminding you to check out 4-Letter World, released August 2nd, 2024 on Bandcamp, because great music is out there. Go find it where you live. But yours is so much bigger than mine.
Thanks. What is going on here at the show? Anyway, we're talking about waveforms today, and my guest is Larry Gates with Waveforms Are Us.
That's a wrap.
Champaign is also a band.
You almost have an NPR voice. It's so good.
Luhava Studio, South Peter, on the inside.
But yeah, so it had that very fair. I just worked on it. It had a very peripheral. Oh my God! It's like the worse I try.
This will be the first 7 minutes of the podcast.